Hey everyone, welcome back to the CareerMetis Podcast. This is your host Nisar Ahmed. This is episode 107 of the CareerMetis Podcast. And this episode is part of the A Day in the Life of series. If you're listening to this for the first time, what we do in the Day in the Life of series is for these episodes, I conduct interviews with individuals from a particular career. They talk to us about their profession, how they got started. They tell us more about what they do day in, day out. And for today's episode, I'm speaking with someone who is a legal and law enforcement transcriptionist. Our guest's name is Erin Derr. Erin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before I get to learn a little bit more about your story and how you got to what you do today, for those of us who are not familiar with what a legal and law enforcement transcriptionist does, could you please shed some light?
Basically, you're working off of a queue usually, and you get a list of jobs either from a police department or a lawyer firm or something like that, and they're just dictating reports or letters, and you just type up what they say, or you could be typing interviews with suspects, or, there are a lot of different things that you could be doing with it.
It sounds like it's a job that requires a lot of attention to detail.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we'll learn more as we go along in the interview, but now we'd like to know a little bit about yourself. If you can start off by introducing yourself. And the second follow-up question to that would be, how did you get started in this career?
Well, my full name is Erin Derr Schneider, and I actually used to do customer service for a pretty major makeup company, and I really disliked it. It was, just constant calls coming in and people being nasty for small things. And I just started resenting always having to be away from my family to go to a job that I hated. And I started looking for at-home stuff and ended up finding a great site that gave me a long list of legitimate work-from-home jobs and found transcription outsourcing, and it was a life changer. I started working for them, and they've been the best decision I've ever made.
So this is a career that over time you stumbled upon.
Basically, I did the website that I mentioned before. I did a bunch of different types of work at home jobs and then settled on transcription being the best fit for me. And then almost immediately found transcription outsourcing. And, the people there, the manager, the boss, everybody are really wonderful. And it's a really great job.
So the next question I have is, you did tell us what a transcriptionist does, especially in your case, a legal and law enforcement transcriptionist. What does a day-to-day look like for you?
Basically, you go in and you check your queue, and usually there's a couple hours in there of audio, which is more like 8 or 9 hours, depending on the quality of actual work time. You could also have things in box where you've got actual assignments to you specifically that you usually have a few days on. But mostly it's maintaining the queue that's coming in, usually a 24-hour turnaround time on those jobs. And you've got a bunch of different independent contractors or full-timers like me dipping into the queue and working on that stuff.
I'm curious to know, of all the things that you do in this job, what are some of the things that you enjoy more than others?
Well, one of our clients is Cold Justice, the TV show, and that's definitely my favorite ones to get when they send us a big project. I really like their interviews, and it's neat having a kind of a scoop on things that are going on before they hit the news and that kind of thing. And also, it's really just the flexible hours and everything, obviously, are a great big plus.
Now, the flexible hours and work from home, is that typical for any transcriptionist careers or jobs, or is that something that varies from person to person?
It varies. I know that there are transcription jobs that are in office. A lot of departments actually employ their own transcriptionists in-house, but in my experience, it's all been at home.
Okay. That's interesting because I'm assuming, like, for example, depending on the, now you specialize in legal. Now, some individuals might specialize in something else, like medical. I'm assuming in their case, because
Right.
of the demands, they might work at a hospital. I'm not sure. That's just a thought I had.
They might. A lot of hospitals I know will actually require them to work in the hospital at first, and then after a while move them to working at home. It's the same thing with medical coding. But with their transcription, there's a lot hinging on their type of transcription. If they make a mistake, there's a lot that can happen. So, those have to be a little bit more or less flexible, really, but
Oh,
much more serious.
yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I mean, just the thought of that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Imagine
Yeah,
team life and death situations, and also the amount of detail that needs to go. And I would imagine
exactly.
also to be something similar, wouldn't it? Like law enforcement and legal, wouldn't that also require accuracy, detail orientation?
Oh, yeah. Well, each client has their own style guide that they put out, and, how much punctuation they want, and if they want names redacted and that sort of thing. And, obviously you don't want to have a lot of parts that say just inaudible where you couldn't make out what the person was saying, because that definitely could, potentially sway a case, or if you just, mistook no for yes or something like that. But yeah, you really have to pay attention. But for the most part, the audio quality is pretty good, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. At least with my company, the audio quality is pretty
I wanted to go to the question I asked a moment back. I asked you some of the things that you enjoy. What are some of the things that you don't necessarily enjoy?
Sometimes it can get really hectic because you have, like I said, this looming queue. And because most of the other people that are on it are independent contractors, they're under no obligation to work that day or, tell you when they're going to get on there. And so you kind of just work the queue and hope that they'll get on there. And usually they do. So it can get, you can get kind of panicked if you've got some box jobs, coming up and you still got this big queue to take care of. That's one of the things that's a little frustrating sometimes. Other times when you do actually get bad quality, like I one time had a 4-hour interview between a man and someone who was writing a book for him, and they were in a bar. And that was probably the most frustrating job I've ever had. I think that one actually made me cry a few times. But usually, there's not too much that I can really even complain about with the job. It's mostly just, those odd experiences like that.
So I'm just, this is more of a fun question. So you mentioned 4 hours for that job. What is the longest
Yeah.
project you have to do in terms of hours you have to do?
Well, that one, with it being a 4-hour audio, it was, especially because it was such bad quality, it was probably more like a 16 or 17 hour, took me personally 16 or 17 hours to finish. Luckily, I had enough time. But that was probably one of the longer ones. I recently actually had a very large copy typing job that was 600 and something pages that were typed on a typewriter in the 1800s. So that was very interesting and very nerve-wracking and panic-inducing because it was a lot.
I was just curious because there's always that one, no matter what you do, there's always this one client or one project that you always think about. So it sounds like that. I think you mentioned this a couple of times. So it is that particular 4-hour interview which turned into 16 hours.
Yeah, that one was traumatizing.
Now, people if listening to this, they're saying, you know what, this is something I can see myself doing. What would you advise them? Advise them on how do they get started on becoming a transcriptionist?
Well, if it's okay, I can give that website that I went to that has all the jobs listed that are legitimate. They've actually all been vetted, that they actually pay and they're not scams and that kind of thing. That's really the biggest thing, is make sure you don't fall for a scam. A lot of at-home stuff can be completely sketchy, but I can give that website. Also, Amazon MTurk is a really good place to start and get your feet wet and figure out what kind of at-home work you want to do and what kind of transcription you want to do. And, most transcription companies, all they're going to do when you apply is give you a test audio and you type it up. And if your punctuation and everything is okay, then you're hired. That's how I got hired. So you don't need certifications or a whole lot of experience or anything. As long as you have a good grasp on grammar, you're golden.
Very interesting. I'll make sure to add Amazon MTurk. What was the resource? I'll make sure to include that in the show notes, the website.
The other website, it's a long one. It's www.realwaystoearnmoneyonline.com. And it's a blog that this girl does, and she goes through hundreds of transcription and copy typing and all types of different jobs. And she will just write about her experience with them and provide a link to the application. That's actually how I got my job now.
Okay, thanks for sharing. I'll add that. Now, you did mention a little bit about certifications, but does any type of degree help? Like, does someone have to be having a literature or a English communications degree?
No, not at all. At least not for my company. I know some might, but not any that I've seen. Yeah, you just, as long as you're good at the job, you don't have to have any special degrees or schooling or anything. Like I've got a Bachelor of Arts degree, and it's in pottery and metal fabrication. So it has nothing to do with the job, but yeah, you don't need any of that stuff.
Okay, that's actually very encouraging to hear. It's more on the skill set and your experience and how you can deliver. It's very technical compared to, like there are careers out there which you cannot get started.
Exactly.
Spend time and degrees and certifications.
Exactly. And it's, it's really nice as long as you can follow directions and follow the style guides for each client, and you just type what you hear and use the right punctuation, which everybody thinks that they are really, really, grammatically correct when they write, and then they start transcribing and you start figuring out that you actually were not nearly as good as you thought you were. But it's all just learning. The only way you're going to be a good transcriptionist is if you just go ahead and start it.
So the next question is like, what does an ideal career path look like? Let's say someone gets started like you, and where can this take them potentially?
Well, I guess the top would be just having your own transcription company. I started out as an independent contractor, and about 6 months later, they made me full-time, and now I've got insurance and, full-time employee benefits and everything. And so you can move up to, typically what people are working for in a good job outside the home, or you can go further and become a reviewer and then have your own company and that kind of thing. But as far as real career with it, I don't know how much farther you could go.
But yeah, if someone does decide to make this their own practice, right? Like for example, look at legal. Someone can work in a law firm. Eventually, they can have their doctors, their own clients. Sounds like that's also
Right.
someone can take. Very interesting. But the final question is, of course, now we are coming towards the end, and the final question is, what advice will you give to someone who wants to get into this field?
Just if you want to get into, whether it's at home or outside the home, if you want to get into transcription, the best thing to do is go to one of those websites, to Amazon MTurk, and do a bunch of the little short, tiny bits of audio on there, and really get accustomed to having to type while somebody's talking. And then start apply to a bunch of different ones, and you'll actually get better as you're applying because you're doing these tests the whole time, these audio tests. And, eventually you'll find, the one that really, pays well, pays, at least the average rate for an IC. And I mean, really the best way to do it is just to just do it. Go out there and try.
Absolutely. And that's actually great advice. Not just this career, but also for many careers. One of the best ways to get started is just get started. So
yeah, that's the only way you're going to learn and get actually get good at it, is if you're just doing it. Nobody's good at everything right at the beginning.
So true. And Erin, thanks for joining us, sharing about this career. I mean, until recently, I did not know that this as a profession existed at such scale, and there was a specific industry and resources for it. So thanks for sharing about that. I'm sure the audience has also found this enlightening.
I hope so.
Thanks everyone for joining and listening to yet another episode of the CareerMetis Podcast. I have written a brief summary of the interview with the resources that Erin shared as part of show notes. If you enjoyed this episode and learned something new, feel free to post a comment or review. And if you really loved it, definitely go ahead and share this amongst your network. Until the next time, this is Nisar Ahmed, your host for the CareerMetis Podcast. Thank you.